I spent 10 years telling patients fresh produce was always the healthiest choice.
I was wrong, and the research that changed my mind will probably surprise you too.
USDA data. The average American household throws out $310 of fresh produce every year. Those same households on frozen and canned spent hundreds less with equal nutrition. What medical school and nutrition certification programs didn't teach me, I'm sharing today. This is the evidence your doctor probably hasn't had time to review either. Drop your city in the comments. I want to know where my viewers are watching from. From Chicago to Houston to Miami. This data changes how you shop, starting today. Let me show you the psychological mechanism operating on you at every grocery store entrance. That produce display greeting you at the door? Designed by behavioral scientists, not dietitians. Their job was to trigger a specific emotional response, and they do it every single time. A 2025 study in food quality and preference documented this in controlled research conditions. Participants shown identical nutrition data still chose fresh over frozen, every single time tested. Researchers call it unconscious bias, running below your awareness, overriding what the data says. This design hasn't changed in decades because it keeps working, on all of us, consistently. Retailers optimize for emotional response, not for what the nutritional science actually recommends. Recognizing this mechanism is how you start making decisions based on data instead of feelings. Once you see this clearly, walking into a grocery store genuinely never feels the same again. Now, here's what the label on your fresh spinach is deliberately not disclosing to you. Nutritional degradation starts at harvest, not when you open the bag at home. Food chemistry research. Fresh spinach loses up to 75% of its vitamin C. That loss occurs within just 7 refrigerated days, completely routine post-harvest conditions. Grocery store produce gets harvested early. It must survive a long national distribution journey. Cold storage, refrigerated trucks, distribution centers, your cart arrives days after nutritional peak. By purchase, nutritional peak is already days behind that bag, not waiting inside it. You are paying a fresh label premium for a product past its optimal nutritional window. I wish I had understood this earlier. It would have changed the advice I gave patients. Frozen produce runs on a completely different biological timeline, and the evidence backs this fully. Harvested at peak ripeness, then flash frozen within hours, nutrients locked at their maximum point. Freezing arrests all biological activity. The nutritional clock stops. Nothing degrades in your freezer. Think of it as preserving the single best nutritional second of that vegetable's entire life. The 2015 Buzari et al. Study in the Journal of Agriculture and Food Chemistry confirmed this. Frozen broccoli, sweet corn, blueberries, matched or exceeded fresh on multiple measured vitamins. Independent UC Davis research, not funded by frozen food manufacturers, not industry-sponsored results. Patients in Chicago and Minneapolis. I want you specifically to hear this before winter arrives. Cold climate states lose meaningful fresh produce access for roughly half the calendar year, minimum. During those months, frozen is clinically the more nutritious option sitting on those store shelves. I now recommend frozen as the default produce category for most of my patients year-round. Canned food is the most misunderstood category in nutrition, and I contributed to that misunderstanding. UC Davis reviewed over 40 peer-reviewed studies comparing canned produce directly to fresh produce. Their conclusions surprised the nutrition community. Canned is comparable to fresh across most parameters. Canning does reduce vitamin C. Approximately 60% loss is an accurate literature estimate. But here is the finding that made me publicly correct advice I'd given patients for years. Canned tomatoes contain significantly more bioavailable lycopene than raw, fresh tomatoes. More, not less. Thermal processing disrupts cell walls and dramatically increases lycopene absorption by the human body. Lycopene is the carotenoid most consistently linked to reduced prostate cancer risk in peer-reviewed research.
Clinically, canned tomatoes are now my superior recommendation for patients optimizing cardiovascular health. Canned corn shows similar thermally enhanced antioxidant profiles compared to the raw counterpart. A Nutrients Journal study found 6+ canned items weekly correlated with measurably higher nutrient intakes. Higher potassium, calcium, dietary fiber, 3 nutrients where Americans are chronically and severely deficient. Dietary guidelines have pushed fresh for 50 years. The evidence said otherwise the whole time. The peer-reviewed literature kept telling a more complicated story that guidelines consistently chose to ignore. Now the economic dimension, because food insecurity is genuinely a critical public health crisis. USDA economists analyzed prices on 155 produce items across American grocery stores nationwide. Their findings dismantle assumptions most American shoppers carry without ever examining them critically. Fresh spinach, $1.77 per cup equivalent. Frozen spinach costs a consistent fraction of that every week. Fresh corn at $1.50 per cup, frozen corn at 64 cents. Same nutrition, less than half cost. Michigan State, canned vegetables run up to 50% below frozen pricing across multiple categories. And up to 20% below fresh, consistently, not occasionally, across the categories studied. Here's the 2026 number that stopped me completely when I first reviewed this data. USDA. Farm-level fresh vegetable prices jumped 49% compared to just 1 year ago. 49%. Not seasonal noise, a structural and sustained fresh produce price surge. Import tariffs on garlic, asparagus, and other produce categories are driving significant portions of this. Domestically processed frozen vegetables remain largely shielded from those tariff pressures currently. California patience. LA, San Francisco, San Diego, you're absorbing the steepest fresh price increases nationally. Your regional fresh produce bills right now rank among the most expensive anywhere in the country. The frozen aisle at Trader Joe's or Ralph's is genuinely the evidence-based clinical recommendation today. A 4-person household making strategic switches could realistically retain $800 to $1,200 annually. That's a year of gym membership, preventive care, or medication copays, real healthcare money. And critically, you make zero nutritional sacrifice to achieve those savings. Zero. Clinical transparency requires me to address the real concern with canned food: BPA exposure. Bisphenol A line the interior of virtually every commercially produced food can ever made. A 2015 EPA-funded Dallas study found BPA in 73% of tested canned food samples. Samples pulled from standard American supermarkets, not imports, not specialty stores, your local shelves. BPA is an endocrine disruptor mimicking estrogen, linked to cardiometabolic and reproductive health issues. Now, here's where the clinical picture gets more troubling, and most consumers don't know this part. Industry reports 95% of cans are now BPA-free. That improvement is real and acknowledged. But replacement chemicals have not undergone equivalent long-term human safety evaluation. Not even close. Consumer Reports 2024. Bisphenol compounds still present in 79% of all tested food products. EWG states safety data on replacement chemicals remains scientifically incomplete. Their words, not mine. The risk was substituted, not eliminated. And this is information consumers genuinely deserve to have. My clinical recommendation: choose verified BPA-free labeled brands when purchasing canned goods. Trader Joe's, Muir Glen, Wild Planet, all 3 have made public formal BPA-free commitments. Always drain and rinse canned foods. Reduces sodium load and limits residual chemical contact meaningfully. Glass jar alternatives for tomatoes, beans, sauce. Glass over cans whenever it is available. Wild Planet and Crown Prince display BPA-free certification directly on the product label. Verify it. Small, consistent interventions compound significantly over months. These shopping habits are worth building now. I want to address a public health dimension of food waste that rarely enters this conversation.
USDA data. American households discard approximately 31% of all purchased food annually. For a four-person household, that's roughly $1,500 per year entering landfills. Real financial waste. The dominant discarded category? Fresh produce. Consistently, by a wide and documented margin. That spinach bag in your refrigerator right now? Genuinely, when exactly did you purchase that? Real income, real labor hours. Decomposing in a plastic bag in your vegetable crisper. Frozen produce maintains full usability for 8 to 12 months in standard household freezer conditions. Canned goods remain shelf-stable for 1 to 5 years under normal pantry storage. Zero waste. Factor in real consumption patterns, and frozen and canned demonstrate clear, measurable total cost advantages. Let me give you the evidence-based purchasing protocol I now use with my own patients. These are the actual recommendations I updated after reviewing the research. Screenshot this section. Berries. Strawberries, blueberries, raspberries. Frozen is now my clinical default, without exception. Out-of-season fresh berries retail at $5 to $7 per pound at most American stores. Frozen berries average $2 to $3 per pound, with equivalent or superior nutritional profiles. New York and Boston patients paying $6 for a single pint. This recommendation is for you. Leafy greens, spinach, kale, chard. Frozen is the updated clinical recommendation on all dimensions. Fresh spinach at $1.77 per cup versus frozen at a consistent fraction of that per equivalent serving. Frozen spinach does not degrade in your crisper within 72 hours. A practical compliance win. We have all bought fresh kale with genuine health intentions and discarded it entirely unused. Frozen solves this. Tomatoes for cooking. Canned is now my unambiguous clinical and economic recommendation. More bioavailable lycopene, better cooked flavor, significantly lower cost. Canned wins objectively here. Houston, Atlanta, Charlotte patients, your instincts on canned tomatoes were clinically correct all along. Beans and legumes. Canned is the clinical recommendation for cost efficiency and preparation convenience. Rinsing canned beans reduces sodium by up to 41%. Peer-reviewed, confirmed, zero-cost intervention. Peas and corn. Frozen is preferred for texture, nutritional integrity, and dietary compliance outcomes. The textural gap between frozen and canned corn is substantial, clinically meaningful for patient adherence. One finding that surprises most patients: frozen broccoli contains measurably more vitamin E than store fresh. Carrots, sweet potatoes, root vegetables. Fresh remains my recommendation on price and palatability. Fresh carrots at approximately 30 cents per cup equivalent. Genuinely hard for any format to match. Root vegetables hold nutritional integrity in refrigerated storage for weeks. Fresh wins here clearly. Canned tuna, salmon, sardines, the most clinically underappreciated budget protein sources available today. Canned wild salmon delivers omega-3s, complete protein, calcium, vitamin D, all for $2 to $3. Equivalent fresh salmon at Whole Foods in Seattle or Chicago retails at $15 to $22 per pound. The nutritional equivalence is documented. The price differential is clinically indefensible at that gap. Quick pause. If this is updating your clinical knowledge on groceries, a like supports the channel. Drop your city below. I want to see exactly where this evidence-based content is reaching people. 19 million Americans experience this conversation from a fundamentally different clinical reality. CDC data. 19 million people live in food access deserts with severely limited fresh produce availability. Detroit, Baltimore, Memphis, rural Appalachia, the fresh versus frozen debate is a genuine luxury there. In food desert communities, canned food is not a compromise. It is the primary nutritional infrastructure. Michigan State. Canned food consumption supports nutrient target attainment at every measured income level. Not a consolation finding. Evidence that adequate nutrition genuinely remains accessible regardless of geography. Canned goods reach dollar stores and corner stores where fresh produce inventory simply does not exist. Watching from Detroit, Memphis, or Baltimore, comment and describe your local grocery situation for us. Your lived experience shapes the clinical content this channel produces. It genuinely matters here. Now, the intervention most households are not applying, and it's where I see the biggest gap. The clinical recommendation for fresh produce is specifically for in-season, locally sourced varieties only. Midwest summer. Fresh corn, tomatoes, zucchini at genuine nutritional peak and their lowest annual pricing. Kansas City, St. Louis, Indianapolis. Farmers markets from June through September are the clinical prescription. That seasonal local produce is the optimal nutritional and economic intervention available to you all year. Then winter arrives, and that same tomato now ships from Mexico or Peru to reach your store. Harvested prematurely, refrigerated for days in transit, arriving nutritionally below its stated potential. You paid a premium for produce performing clinically below what that label is implying about its quality. Canned tomatoes in winter. More lycopene, superior cooked flavor, significantly lower cost. No debate. Out-of-season berries, peppers, asparagus, the frozen clinical recommendation applies without exception. The sodium concern with canned vegetables deserves a direct clinical answer. Here it is, plainly. Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana lead the nation in hypertension prevalence. This section is specifically for you. Canned vegetables typically carry 300 to 600 milligrams of sodium per serving in standard formulations. 2 standard sodium canned vegetable servings approaches 1/4 of the AHA recommended daily sodium limit. The clinical intervention is zero cost and takes 30 seconds. Rinse under cold running water. For canned beans, rinsing reduces sodium by up to 41%, peer-reviewed and independently confirmed. For other canned vegetables, rinse-based reduction averages 9 to 23%, still clinically meaningful. Selecting low-sodium or no-salt added formulations at point of purchase provides compounding additional benefit. Philadelphia, Memphis, Jackson hypertension patients, implement both interventions consistently, starting now. Plain frozen vegetables contain zero added sodium. This is the baseline clinical recommendation, always. Frozen blends with sauce packets or cheese carry sodium loads exceeding standard canned vegetables. Plain frozen is your clinical foundation. Sauce packets are an industry margin product, not a health product. Let me consolidate this into the clinical framework I give patients who ask how to shop smarter. 3 categories, 3 tools. Knowing which to apply and when is the entire evidence-based strategy. Fresh is your precision tool. In-season, local, consumed within 1 to 2 days of purchase. Frozen is your clinical workhorse. Peak harvest nutrition, zero spoilage, stable pricing year-round, always. Canned is your pantry infrastructure, 5-year stability, lowest cost, massively underutilized by most patients. Evidence-based cart, fresh for in-season local produce and what you prepare and eat same day. Frozen for berries, leafy greens, peas, corn, fish, your consistent weekly nutritional backbone. Canned for tomatoes, beans, tuna, salmon, shelf-stable staples with documented nutritional credentials. Maintain this pattern and your diet quality measurably exceeds most American households around you. You retain $800 to $1,200 annually, with zero compromise to any measured nutritional outcome. I want to understand your challenges. What is your single biggest grocery obstacle right now? Cost, access, time, or just overwhelmed by contradictory nutrition advice you cannot properly evaluate? Leave your city and situation in the comments. Every single one gets read by our team. Should I build an episode on evidence-based eating for $50 per week anywhere in America? Or a city price comparison? New York, Houston, Chicago grocery budgets analyzed head-to-head. Or a food desert clinical analysis by state? We will build that for underserved communities. Tell me exactly what clinical content you need. I will build it specifically for you. Here's the clinical conclusion. The food industry has very limited financial interest in publicizing Grocery store fresh produce is frequently outperformed nutritionally by properly sourced frozen alternatives. The fresh label premium purchases visual appeal and psychological reassurance. It does not purchase nutrition. Frozen delivers superior, consistent daily nutrition. Peer-reviewed evidence supports this conclusion comprehensively. Canned is dramatically undervalued clinically. I say that having been wrong about it for years. Canned tomatoes deliver more bioavailable lycopene than raw fresh ones, confirmed across multiple independent studies. Independent research groups, zero industry funding. This conclusion stands on its own scientific merits. The real nutritional crisis is not which produce format you buy. It is total vegetable volume. 1 in 10 Americans meets daily vegetable targets. That is the actual clinical problem to solve. If frozen peas and canned beans increase your consistent daily vegetable intake, that is a genuine win. Do not allow fresh-only framing to generate guilt around eating well within your real financial constraints. Every vegetable in every form counts clinically. Fresh, frozen, canned. This is evidence, not compromise. One final clinical point. Seasonal purchasing is your single highest leverage nutritional and financial intervention. In-season local produce is genuinely the optimal recommendation when it is genuinely available to you. Midwest Summer, Kansas City, St. Louis, Indianapolis farmers markets from June through September. Harvest fresh, locally grown, priced at annual lows. This is the clinical recommendation in practice. Winter changes the evidence base entirely. That tomato now travels after days of refrigerated transport. Harvested prematurely, shipped across the continent, arriving nutritionally below what the label suggests. You paid a fresh premium for produce performing well below what that premium clinically implies. Winter protocol. Canned tomatoes, frozen berries, frozen peppers. Season dictates the evidence-based choice. Use fresh local in-season whenever genuinely available. Frozen and canned carry everything else completely. That single behavioral shift saves real hundreds annually and simultaneously improves your nutritional outcomes. You now have the clinical framework to make evidence-based decisions at every single grocery visit. The store optimizes for your emotional response. Fresh displays, premium pricing, behavioral science triggers. You are now optimized for data. Today's evidence puts you ahead of most shoppers everywhere. If this updated your clinical approach to groceries this week, a like genuinely supports this channel. Share this with someone whose doctor hasn't had time to review this research with them yet. They've been operating on outdated nutrition advice for years. Tag them. They deserve the updated data. Subscribe for evidence-based nutrition, food economics, and clinical health content delivered every week. I'll see you in the next episode. Drop your city in the comments before you go. From New York to Phoenix to Nashville, I want to hear from every one of you.